Are they all members of the Shura? All of you? Right. How many members? How many?
108 were present at the election time.
Acha, mashallah. But how many reported altogether?
Registration.
108 got registered, right. MashaAllah, Sharma Sahib, since when have you joined Khudamul Ahmadiyya? Huh? MashaAllah. Not yet. So do something about it. It's high time.
He's Rishta Nata in charge as well.
Acha, so you have to be kind and courteous to him. Now, this is a question answer session. As you are so familiar with this, so now I invite you. Yaya Mackenzie, how are you? Have seen you after ages. Where have you been? All right, let's start with the question answer session now. Where are the chairs? Which ones? These?
This row and then going back there.
Acha, they're all here waiting for their time
Yes.
to ask questions?
Yes.
Okay, then start with the first.
Assalamu alaikum, Huzur.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Huzur, can I start before asking my question, can I request some prayers for my Taya? He has just been admitted to hospital
When?
today.
Acha.
Sorry, yesterday. I just came from...
What happened?
His name is Qazi Munir Bhatti.
No, what happened?
He has not been well, and he's been in a lot of pain, and then he couldn't bear it, and then he was admitted to hospital. I believe it was yesterday.
Is he the elder son of Bashir Bhatti Sahib marhum?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Right?
That's right, yes.
Right. So, next the question please now.
Yes, the question, Huzur, is I was having a discussion with Baha'i, and he said that everything, as is written in the Holy Quran, has got an ajalan musamma. Everything has a fixed term.
Right.
And he said it is also the case with Islam. And a time will come when Islam will also be finished, and then another religion
No,
will come.
but where is that mentioned in the Quran about the Quran? The Holy Quran speaks of a definite period for everything, but it also speaks for a definite period for moon and sun and the universe. So does it mean that the universe will come to an end in the lifetime of Baha'is, and then they will take over from there on? Just to say that everything will come to an end is a general statement which is not challenged or denied by any sane man on earth. So out of this statement, how can they find an evidence in the favor of their truth? It's a universal truth. Any Tom, Dick and Harry can say, because this is the universal truth, so we are right, we have started a new religion. It doesn't mean sense at all, does it?
Yes.
Unless they prove from the Quran has said about itself that it will come to an end. This book will be no more a valid currency by God. It will come to an end and finish. And from then on, a new book will be revealed. Unless this statement is proved to be found in the Holy Quran, the Baha'i argument has no basis whatsoever. Okay?
Yes, but he also mentioned...
the Holy Quran, on the contrary, says it is a book which has been well guarded and well protected, and none can touch it. No man or Satan will be permitted to alter this book.
Yeah.
And this is proved beyond a shadow of doubt that the book is not altered. So when the statement is correct, then until the Baha'is show the alteration in the book, the time of this book will continue.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Well, Sam?
So, question is about when we say, especially in Pakistan, about evil eye, or if I explain in Urdu like nazar lag jana, what is the reality behind that?
I think it should be experimented on you. People say, mashallah, you're very healthy and strong. And the next day you find you suffering from diarrhea, then let me know. All right? I think you're more worried about your child than yourself.
No, every time we listen to some arguments that yes, every elder normally say that when somebody is running about the child or even the elders that isko nazar na lag jaye.
I know that, and I have answered you, I think. But what I mean to say further to my answer, I have been speaking on this subject at different occasions, in depth and at length. And I thought you were present in some of those occasions, and you should have got the answer by now. To say that human mind can work on other human minds is not only true, it is well supported by the Holy Quran. Because in case of the bout between Moses and the magicians of Pharaoh, this exactly is the inference drawn by the Holy Quran, that it was the eyes of the people who were spellbound. What was that which bound the eyes and made them see things which were not there? They began to see things which were imaginary. This is hypnotism. So if an evil person who has that out of practice or by nature, who has been provided with this faculty of influencing others by just exerting his mind on something, upon somebody, then such a person can bring about some evil on the object of his mental concentration. So as far as the institution of influencing others through mental concentration or through the specific stare of one's eyes is concerned, this is scientific, it is established scientifically, and it is also supported by the Holy Quran, as I have just mentioned. There is no doubt about it. But to live always in fear and in a state of superstitious atmosphere, where everybody thinks, child who falls ill, they say maybe he's got the bad side of somebody, that is stupidity. The incidence of inflicting some harm upon others through the mental power is far less than the possibility of somebody inflicting harm otherwise, in so many other ways is concerned. There's so many ways, 101 ways of people, children falling ill and making mixed steps and breaking their bones and doing this and that, eating something poisonous, or breathing polluted air and getting asthma as an effect of that. The possibilities of harm reaching people and children are so many. And this one is one small possibility which is very rare. So because we say it is possible, it doesn't mean that people should start considering every time they fall ill or something befalls them that they have been influenced by an evil eye. The life will become superstitious if you do that. If, suppose, every time your child becomes ill and some ignorant woman suggests that this child has he's been targeted by an evil eye, then what is the answer? The answer is, all right, if the evil eye has produced some physical effect, we'll try to counter that by medicine, by treating the child. And when you start doing it, the child will be cured. You understand?
Yeah.
So that would in fact prove that it was not an evil eye. It was just some mishap which resulted in the child's illness. And again, if suppose you are convinced that it was after all evil eye, it was not caused by any physical instrument or physical means, then what is the answer? The answer is you should pray, you should say La hawla wa la quwwata, you should seek refuge with Allah, say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, and the evil thoughts will be dispelled. And of that also we have a proof in the Holy Quran, in the same incident which I referred to, the bout between Moses and the magicians. He didn't exert any mental pressure upon them. He didn't even try to influence them through the power of his mind. He himself was so scared. How could he counter that influence by his superior will? Every time he threw his staff and it appeared to turn into a python or a big snake, he ran away. That was his mental power. So when such a person, as weak as Moses was, in his resolution and bravery, every time God had to tell him, don't run away, please stop, stay, I am with you. Then what worked for him? What was that? It was God's superior power. So God has already shown you that if I can do it for one person, I can do it for another person too. Only you have to beseech me, you have to come to seek my help and seek my refuge. So that is the only thing permissible to a Muslim, to seek Allah's refuge and forget about the other things. Otherwise you will live in a world of superstition from which you will never be able to extricate yourself. Okay?
Exactly.
Assalamu alaikum, Hazur.
Welcome.
Hazur, this question has been bothering me ever since I heard it. That in an event of war, i.e. jihad, when if you're fighting, especially against people who are fighting to stop you practicing Islam, and in the bounties of when you capture the army, amongst the bounties, if you capture their people and the women, they are also become your property. I heard the word londi. But the question that bothers me, although I've heard that it's in Islam it's advisable or preferred that you should release them and get them married amongst themselves, but the question that bothers me is that while they're your property, as I heard it, it sounds horrible that you can use them as mistresses or use them as you wish because they are your property. This is a question that has been bothering me since I heard it.
The Holy Quran has used the word whoever is under your right hands, that is under your command. They are under your care. This is the meaning. And the situation which is discussed in the Holy Quran is that of a war with an enemy which practices these things. Not with an enemy which treats women with respect. In fact, this was a custom of the entire world for a long time. Only recently these customs have started changing, but not enough. The custom was that there were no camps for war prisoners, and the prisoners were distributed to the soldiers who became victorious or who won a temporary victory over the enemy and got some prisoners, among them women as well. Now the enemy or the warring parties, both of them, they, according to the established custom, treated these women as their real property. They could do anything to do them, whatever they like. But instead of handing them over to the wolves' pack, only they were handed over to one person, so that at least he doesn't go beyond certain limits to do bad things to a person. So then belonging would be to one person and he would be responsible, and no one else in the society will have access to that lady. Now, if this is done by the enemy, and if it is not done by the Muslim party involved with some enemy, then the ladies of the non-believers who already have a very low moral standard, they'll be treated with deep respect like they're ladies. And the real chaste ladies of Islam will be treated like they are beasts. That is not evil, even. I mean, that's not justice. That's not an equitable arrangement. That is why in wars, everywhere, even today, it is an established principle, almost like an unwritten law, that as the enemy treats your soldiers, your prisoners belonging to your people, so also you have the right to counter that by doing exactly the same things. Now this is a universal principle to keep people in check. If it were not practiced, then the enemy could go beyond all limits in transgressing against a well-behaved people. They have limits, they will not cross, and they have no limits, so they can do as whatever they like. This had to be brought to a check and to a halt. This is why the Holy Quran speaks of this situation, as says that you have certain permission from God to treat these women. But you are not permitted to make any transgression against them. You are not permitted to treat them as commodities. And many conditions are laid upon your treatment of the prisoners of war, which create a new category of prisoners of war, which was never seen like that before, not only in that age, but even today. If you read the conditions attached to the prisoners of war in Islam, the teaching is so highly civilized and so highly cultured that even in the modern wars, you can't find any such thing even close to that. Haven't you read about the treatment meted out to the prisoners of war by both sides, Germany and England and all the belligerent nations?
Yeah. Well, I've witnessed it myself in Bosnia.
Haven't you seen the places, the war prisons?
Yeah.
And how these women were treated, and how these children were treated, and how in forced labor and with being poorly fed, they died out of, gradually killing hunger, which would not kill them suddenly, but it was a lingering torture by hunger, which ultimately destroyed them. I've seen the pictures of those prisoners. I've seen the prisons themselves in Germany, wherever they are kept preserved. So you can't say it was just Germany. They were treated alike everywhere. The Germany went forward a bit too much, but the treatment of other prisoners of war, by Japanese for instance, most horrid. So even today, when people boast of such advanced civilization, the treatment of prisoners of war is far below that standard, which is laid down as a rock bottom standard by Islam. So in respect of those women who were captured, imagine what could be done to them. Number one, some among them were married, separated from their husbands. some were not married, and the fate of war hanging was hanging, not in balance, but was so precariously hanging, anything could happen. Although the Muslims believed they would become victorious, but this is the general state of statement about wars which applies to every such situation. The wars are uncertain things. So what would you do with those ladies? There is no separate war camp. The result would be, if they are left free, then they will play havoc with the chastity of the whole society. Then they will be free to go here and there and give vent to their own passions while they are not properly trained and educated. They come from a free, much freer society than what we find in Islam. Now, if you don't permit that, then I believe much more damage will be done, not only to those ladies themselves, but to the society as a whole. The proof is that after every war in Europe, the moral standard went down the drain like a ton of bricks. It sank suddenly so deep that all those who keep count of these things, they have written books on this, they say there is a very definite proof that every war lowers the standard of morality in the area where the war is fought. So Islam provides a legal outlet. And who does it? God. Now, if it is God, this is the question which you must address, then there is no crime involved, because He is the maker of law. Al-amru kulluhu lillah. He is the master. He made the institution of marriage, and He prohibited you from doing this and from doing that, and permitted you to do this or do that. So who is the maker of law? If a law is proclaimed by God, that in such situation, under limited conditions, you are permitted to have husband and wife relationship with such women, then where is the immorality of that? The alternative cannot be conceived. This is the only course which was available, but not devised by people themselves, but a course which was advised by God. If that had not happened, I can't imagine what might have happened then. Then they were told to treat all the slaves, not only women, but all the slaves, with such respect that they should feed them with what they feed themselves on, and they should dress them in the clothes in which they dress themselves. The result was that it was sometimes very difficult for people to distinguish between a slave and a master. And repeatedly we find reference in the Islamic history that even a caliph walking to market for shopping along with somebody, and people don't know who is the master and who is the slave. Once Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu asked for 2 pieces of cloth for some suit, and he chose exactly the similar ones. So the cloth merchant said, "Why do you have 2 pieces of exactly the similar pattern, color and everything? I have other designs, I have other patterns. Why don't you choose from that?" He said, No, this other one is for my slave. He said, "For your slave?" He said, "Yes." He said, "I heard Rasul Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Dress them in what you dress yourselves. Make them eat of what you eat." So this is the Islamic teaching. And the respect shown to these slave women is unparalleled in the history of relationship of war. It is said that if they bear a child, then they are like your lawfully wed wives. They have all the rights which the wives have. And their children will not be considered illegitimate. They would be like legitimate children, and they would have all the rights on the society and on your property. Was this ever done by any people in the world? in treatment to vis-a-vis their treatment to prisoners of war. So look at it in the totality, and then you'll understand that Islamic teaching is far more respectable and civilized than any practice or any teaching by any people of the world at any age. If you study the injunctions relating to slaves in Islam, you'll be amazed at the beauty of that. People say Islam permits to enslave others. It's false. The Holy Quran is the only book which says no slaves can be made of free human beings except out of a bloody war where the battle is fierce and a lot of blood is shed. Not out of skirmishes. You go out and you have a skirmish. According to the Holy Quran, it is forbidden to enslave anybody out of a skirmish you have in your journey to anywhere. So it lays down the condition, a fierce, bloody battle is waged. As a result of that, when prisoners come, they are the only way of they are the only valid prisoners of war. About other situations regarding the prisoners of war, now about slaves, we find more than 12 ways of releasing the prisoners, but no other way of enslaving them, enslaving free human beings, except the war which I have just mentioned. But you read in the Holy Quran at so many places, if you do this, if you commit such a sin, if you make such an omission, the punishment for that is emancipate, liberate a slave, or liberate 10 slaves, or liberate so many slaves. And then the Holy Quran also mentions the possibility of a slave to force his freedom by entering into a contract which is called mukatabat. And this is written in the Holy Quran. If a slave thinks that he wants to earn his freedom by paying him after he is freed, and if he renders enough guarantees to the effect that he will keep his contract, then if the master of that slave or a woman or a maid slave refuses to do that, the Islamic State has the authority to enforce this. Many cases are reported when some masters insisted, no, we don't trust you, or under one excuse or another, they said, we are not going to liberate you. The slave went to the caliph and said, this is what he says and this is what I say. And the caliph heard both the sides and said, no, you must liberate him. The Holy Quran does not leave you any room to impose your own decision upon him. If he meets the conditions laid down in the Holy Quran, you have no choice but to liberate him. Have you ever heard of such master-slave relationship anywhere in the world?
No.
It's unbelievable. So many openings are made for the slaves to go out. And the inlet is only one, that of a fierce war. But there also the Holy Quran repeatedly lays a condition that you cannot do to your enemy what the enemy doesn't do to you. People don't observe this. It's a most beautiful and most effective measure to prevent all evil practices in war relationship. It plugs all holes. It says that if enemy transgresses against you, only then you have a right to transgress against him. If enemy insults you, only then you have a right to insult him. If the enemy kills you in a certain way, which is not proper, only then you can use that improper manner, but exactly to the extent that the enemy has done to you. Not an iota beyond, and repeatedly warns that if you must revenge, do it up to the extent that enemy does it. Now this is the principal teaching which governs every other provision. And according to my understanding of this provision, I believe that if an enemy at war does not mistreat your women or uses them as their wives, etc., does not permit free relationship with them to the soldiers, then you have no right to do the same things to their women. So this permission is also conditional, because the conditions I am mentioning, the overriding conditions, are common and repeatedly emphasized. So that is why I say they are overriding conditions. Now that is one side of the picture, and the other is those who claim they are the champions of freedom of slaves and emancipation of mankind, much later than Islam, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, what were they doing? Enslaving Africa, poor African people and others, and sending them en masse like herded sheep or other cattle to America for selling them in American markets, and they had no right whatsoever. Read the history of those slaves, you'll be absolutely, you'll be tortured to read that. It's a thorough punishment to study that history. They have no right whatsoever. You can put them to labor day and night. You can ask them to do things which you will be ashamed of doing yourselves. While in Islam, the Holy Prophet tells, according to in the light of the Quranic teaching, warns us that only take that much work from your slaves which they can easily perform. You cannot overload them. You cannot overburden them. Never take any work from your slaves which you yourself are ashamed to do. If you can't do it, you can't take it from your slaves. Then he says, apart from feeding them alike, sometimes ask your slaves to sit on the table and you serve them. Have you ever heard such a teaching anywhere? About the enslaving of a free person, like I mentioned in the history of Christian peoples dealing with poor Africa, the Holy Quran, Hazrat Muhammad ﷺ warned. He said, those people whom God hates most, among them are those who capture a free man whom God had created free and turn him into a slave. You see? How more emphatically it could be denied man the right to enslave anyone else. The Holy Prophet says God hates those people most. There are some people whom God hates most. One of the categories is anyone captures a person who was born free by God and this man enslaved him. So this proves that my understanding of the Quran, as I said, that there is no way of making any slave except under a certain condition is right. It is fully supported by Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah. Okay?
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, Hazur.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
How's your hockey?
We lost badly on Wednesday, I'm afraid.
I think your average age
Is losing.
is about an Ansarullah's age, isn't it?
At 36.
Call yourself Khuddam, I know that.
Yeah, at 36.
But the
I'm
average age you have in that team is Ansarullah age.
I think you're right.
But first of all, it was all right because it was the first stage of Ansarullah. Now your team is entering the second stage. This is the problem. You see? So do something. I have been warning you for last many years. For God's sake, have new recruits from among the youth. Allah's blessing, of course, it was that He granted you some victories, which you didn't earn, of course. But how long? After all, the laws of nature do take over.
I'm in the finance committee today, and I'll try to put a budget so that we can put more investment into Khuddam hockey, sir. if that's okay with you. Is that okay?
Good. Now what is your question, please?
Zul, in the 10 years that
Arshad?
you've been here,
Arshad, you are exception to the rule. You will never get old. He's very young, you know, always. MashaAllah.
Zul, in the 10 years you've been here, I've only asked you one question, so can I take this opportunity to ask you two?
One about your getting old or
No.
not?
We'll do that privately. The first question is an observation which I would like a comment or views from you. Doing tabligh nowadays, I tend to find that a lot of people within the Christian and the Muslim world, we've got all the arguments for them. We've got all the books that back us with what we need to do. But what I see today is that a lot of these people aren't either Christians or aren't Muslims. And they believe in some other religion, some sort of spiritualism or faith healing, stone healing and tarot cards and things like that. And a lot of Westerns are actually involved in Buddhism and Hinduism. We don't seem to tackle that. And we don't seem to tackle those people because they are the majority now in England. I mean, even at schools, they don't teach Christianity as such. They teach all the religions, including these type of religions as well. But we don't seem to have enough knowledge on those to...
Why not?
There just isn't enough information available.
You see, this is not happening accidentally. This is happening out of a design. They want to amalgamate the whole society into something nondescript, whereby they will not be disciplined by their own respective teachings. So everything is all right. You see, do something of this and something of that. This is how they are attempting to amalgamate the non-Western societies with their own, so that there are no taboos in any respect and they mix up without any regards to the instructions from God or God's teachings. So this is a very cunning ploy by them. In the name of freedom, everything is all right, go ahead, do something of Buddhists, choose something of Hindus and this and that. These attempts are not new. They have always been a conspiracy against God. And whenever they are attempted, for a while they work and then they fail. There is not something new. Don't believe that it has started happening only in this age. At Akbar's time, he himself attempted to create a mixed up society whereby Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, they could all share the same sort of social values without having reference to their own divine books. So to amalgamate things and make a sort of religion is a man's attempt, and man-made things never prosper in contrast to Allah's things. God's creation always wins. So this is a phase. Sometimes cults become popular, and people think now the whole world will turn to cults. They come and go. They're like fashions. But solid religious values, they stay. They're not transient phases in the trends of human history. They're permanent fixtures. And that is why the Holy Quran gives the parable of a flood. It said when it rains heavily, you see the flood water rise and the valleys are filled to the brim. Then it raises many things with it, some rich soil, some other elements, etc. But also there is froth on the top of that. What is visible is froth. But when everything settles down, the froth disappears and vanishes. What remains is only the solid values which benefit the world or the soil later on. So you must work in the light of this parable mentioned by the Holy Quran. We are for solid values, for permanent changes in the behavior of man so that he becomes a better animal. And don't be dispirited or oppressed by the lack of response, because maybe it is your fault. Maybe the way they can be made interested has not been employed by you. So I have spoken on this subject. I don't want to take up more time, because otherwise, if I once enter the discussion, then there will be no end to it. So let's stop here. You've got the clue, I hope. You can listen to those cassettes where I dealt with this subject exactly, you know, how to make people interested in religion, those who are atheistic in their attitudes, who are only superficial religious, who are, who want to retain their freedom and yet become religious as much as they like. These are the basic crooked thinking and trends in man, which result in occultism and superstitionism and thisism and thatism. So you must tackle with the problem itself, analyze and diagnose the disease. Only then you can devise something to cure, because prescription always depends on the right diagnosis. So there is so many possibilities. How can I discuss all or even sample possibilities at this time? So you better start thinking in those lines, and inshallah God will give you light. Okay?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can I ask you the second question now?
Was it the first question only?
That's the first question. If not, I can give.
Okay.
The second question was, I was speaking to an Iranian individual, and although he's anti-Khomeini, once I just described Ahmadiyyat and as a Muslim's message. He said, I understand what you're saying and it's very appealing, but you've been here 100 years, but there's no impact on the world. A lot of people know where, you go to little villages in all the world and they know about Ayatollah Khomeini. He wasn't backing Ayatollah, but he was saying they all know him, but this is the first time I'm hearing, but you go to the villages, no one knows of Hazrat Masih Maud. So if it's taken 100 years, it's too slow. Why shouldn't be a bigger
impact? Just a minute. You ask him, there was oil in the world for billions of years. And human beings, when they were born, they used to see the oil on the surface. They never noticed, they never utilized it. So because it took so long for them to understand the value of the oil, you should not start utilizing it now. Why should you start trying to get benefit out of oil? On the same ground, you can say, because this is something which was so insignificant in the sight of men, that although it was here on earth, available for them, and they used to see it, sometimes bubbling out by itself, and they never cared about it. Before that there was coal, and they ignored it altogether. And there are so many precious metals which are now used to improve the quality of human life, which were seen and totally ignored by people. So the ignorance of people doesn't mean that the thing which is being ignored has no value, or because it was ignored before, so it should continuously be ignored now. It's very stupid logic, very, very distorted logic. So you tell them, must see whether it's useful or not. If it is not useful, then throw it away, even if all the people practice it. And we prove to you that the Christianity as understood today is not useful, it is harmful. So what if 1 billion people are Christians? So thus the number doesn't mean anything, the slow pace of advancement doesn't mean anything, they are irrelevant questions. Most of these people from Far East are Christians now. Now you can turn back to him and say, tell me about 100 years after Jesus Christ came. How important had Christianity become? How many countries have taken note of Christianity? You'll be surprised to see that today, after 100 years, we are in 142 countries of the world. And the Christianity had reached altogether in totality not more than 28. I have been working on it with reference to historical geographies and historical reports, and the best margin you could give them was 28 countries. Even if you include just one missionary, Christian missionary having reached there. That was about 100 years after Christianity. And now 100 years after Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, people have taken such note of Ahmadiyyat that wherever I go, even ministers come, the parliamentarians come, all the dignitaries come. Not that I find any honor in that, but in response to your question, I am telling you that this is the dignity which Ahmadiyyat has earned for itself, the respect which it has earned. So why don't you tell him all this? Tell him, compare the present of Ahmadiyyat with your past of that age. That will be a fair comparison. Otherwise, to compare a child of 1 year with a child of a man of 60 years is no comparison at all. Very stupid comparison, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And it's not only the age which matters, there are other factors also which matter. Now, to end up on a happier note, let me tell you of a joke which just belongs to this category. There was a mouse only 2.5 years old, but he was full grown, of course. He had finished almost his youth and was entering sort of Ansarullah,
Like the hockey team.
As it was strolling in the jungle, he saw a child of an elephant. It was quite huge and big. So they started chatting to each other. They became very friendly. And suddenly the mouse thought how old he would be. If I'm 2.5 years, let's see how old he is. He said, Brother Elephant, how old would you be? He said, 2.5 years. And this mouse shuddered. So the elephant child took notice of this and in response said, well, how old would you be? He said, the problem is, although I'm 2.5 years, but I have been rather ill. I have not been enjoying good health. So it is an uneven comparison they are making. They are making the comparison with the Christianity of 2,000 years old, which has reached its age, full blossom of the age, and now it's about to reach the edge of the grave. And they're comparing with a child of 100 years. In history of man, this is a small child's age, in fact. So let them compare the Christianity of 100 years with the Ahmadiyyat of 100 years, okay?
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Just to
How's your politics?
It's going.
Huh?
It's going.
It's good. Okay.
Just to stay on the same subject, Hazur, about Christianity and Ahmadiyyat. During the last year, someone actually wrote to me within the party, sent me a whole lot of papers, that there is a Christian organization in America who is trying to influence the policy, the political policies over there, but at the same time has moved over to this country and in influencing and infiltrated the three main parties. And the reports basically indicated that they were trying to influence the government when the government was drafting the national curriculum, and in light of, in particular to the religious studies program. And as you may know, that initially the time scale that given to schools in the curriculum was something like 70 to 80%.
No, let's come to the conclusion of the question, please. I know the problem.
Okay.
Yes, please.
And I didn't take the matter that seriously at that point about the religious group that was infiltrating, but as a result of the midterm elections in US, we know that is come to light public-wise, that there is a great Christian movement which has come about in there and then try to influence the elections, and has in fact influenced the elections.
Right.
The two things that came out of there, which puzzled me, or not puzzled me, and raised questions about the approach that they have taken. One is, which Hazur has indicated in the last few years, that we must become market orientated in our approach to selling literature and all sorts of our tabligh activity outside and become target orientated, which they have become, but which is not really evidence within our group as yet.
I've got the question, please.
Let
me answer. The fact is that what you are seeing is not a religious phenomenon, it's a political phenomenon. And when I toured America this time, even went to Canada, I had some discussions with some dignitaries as well as the press people and ordinary people, and I expressed the same view to them, with them, before the election of course, that I think there is a very marked swing to the right, and more interest is being taken in building new churches and frequenting churches and taking a rigid attitude in Christianity and Christian dogma. Now this is what was naturally expected by us to have happened, because as long as Russia made the second opposite pole for the Christian might in the so-called free world, they were involved in such serious struggle of survival that they could not give vent to their hatred of Islam and their fear of Islam's conquest, religious conquest of the West. So they had to live, despite their hidden hatred and animosity to Islam, as friends, walk hand in hand, and not to talk of differences. But deep inside, the hatred of Islam has always been alive. Like racialism, it was always alive. You see, a few years ago, a professor of current history came to meet me. He's a Jewish gentleman, and he was talking before the collapse of the Berlin Wall I'm talking about. And he was so vehemently opposing my view that racialism does exist still, and you have not been able to do away with it. It will raise its head, its ugly head, far more rebelliously in the coming future. And he was, first of all, he was flabbergasted. I was, who didn't know what the subject of current history was opposing his well-considered view as a great scholar, that they had been able to do away with racialism once and for all, and now the days of racialism are over. That he is confronting, is opposing this view. But I kept on, and the result was that ultimately, although he couldn't give in there in my presence, he wrote me a letter which all but said that, yes, you are right. He was amazed. I wish I could meet him again, then I will show him now what is happening. I'm talking of the days before the collapse of the communist system. Now, all the factors which were deterrent to ugly nakedness of racialism are gone overboard. Now it's raising, racialism is raising its head everywhere in every country. Racist attitudes are more to be experienced nowadays than ever before. So also is the story of hatred of Islam. They always hated Islam. They were allergic to the Islamic values. They always considered it as a potential hanging threat over the future of Western civilization. As such, they were never happy to strike a sort of compromise with the world of Islam. That is one factor which was suppressed because of the polarization between Russia and the West. It's no more there. That factor is now free. Now this has given birth to a very sharp swing to extreme right. a right which is based not as much on the love of Christianity as on the hatred of Islam. And that is discernible everywhere. And this is also entering politics now. It had infiltrated politics even previously. When they sat together separately in their own rooms, discussing things and relationship, this factor was always the dominant factor in deciding policies. Whether this policy would help Islam spread and become a greater power, or this policy would depress them and this and that, and how to bring about bad name to Islamic figure image in the view of the Western people and so on. Whether it was said in so many words or not, I know for certain this has always been a domineering factor in their formation of policies. Now, in relation to Bosnia, this has become naked. What enmity have they got against their own European brothers in the name of Bosnians? Excellent people. They have never raised a challenge to their social values either, because their name of Islam was just a name without having penetrated their character and way of life. You could not, now they are learning, of course, but previously you could not distinguish between a Christian Bosnian and a Muslim Bosnian. Many a time they came in groups to meet me, and somebody came to me and breathed into my ear, "Please be cautious in your observations, there are a few Christian Bosnians among them." I said, "No, I have nothing to hide. I will say it openly, even if I know that they are installed spies and agents. I would say exactly the same thing as I would in any other situation. But what I'm telling you is this: they were hidden, they were irrecognizable because the way of life was exactly the same. So what was hurting them? Why started calling them Muslims at all? Why not calling them Bosnians versus the Serbs? Right from the beginning, they did it intentionally. The whole media played into the hand of this politics, and this was surreptitiously helped by the church. And even today in America, the church is actively participating behind the scenes in all such policies where the issue of relationship with the Muslim world comes up for discussion. And even those who do not believe in anything, they still hate Islam, because in the final analysis it is not the Christianity for which they are fighting or for which they are making a struggle. It is a mixed affair of a civilization which is adhered to by a large number of people who are considered to be Muslims. The adherents of this civilization are considered to be Christians, I mean not Muslims, Christians, but without Christian values. The church has freely compromised all the Christian values with the irreligious values of the Western civilization. Their permissiveness, their freedom, all the ugliness which you find in the society is not Christian ugliness. Christianity is beautiful. Even when distorted, it is a most attractive system of values. So what you find is not Christian society. It is a mixed irreligious society where Christianity has lost all its battle to the materialism of so many different forms. Now, the only sentiment left for Christianity is in the hearts of a few church leaders whose ultimate dedication to Christianity means hatred of Islam, nothing else. They have lost the battle to win people to Christianity. But if the hatred to Islam can bring them back to their banner, why not? And they are respected and heard with deep reverence whenever they speak on the international issues with relation to the measures against Islam. They conspire. And this organization is so so powerful and so actively monitoring the world affairs that the cunning devices they employ are amazing sometimes. Ahmadiyya Jamaat is a small entity, I know. As far as the Western viewpoint is concerned, we may be considered as nothing, but this is not their viewpoint. This is the viewpoint of stupid people who consider us small and meaningless. They're not stupid, whatever they are. They take note of us, they monitor our policies, the measures we take to popularize Islam in Christian countries, and wherever we go and whatever we do, it is all being monitored. I can give you an interesting example of something reported to me in a letter by an Ahmadi, very intelligent, scholarly young man from America. He reported to me something of which I had already taken note of, and I was surprised how exactly his opinion tallied with mine. He said there are two different things happening apparently. There is a book by a scholar trained in a university written almost entirely against Ahmadiyya view of what happened to Jesus. He says there is no proof, it's all fake, stupid Germans and stupid this and that are following. I have examined the case, there is no ground at all whatsoever to believe that Jesus migrated to Kashmir. And their claim that Kashmir is the place is given a lie because, also because there's so many other things reported elsewhere about this man went there and that man went there. So they poo-poo and discard all the arguments of Ahmadiyyat as a group of arguments meaningless. And another book is published in Japan claiming that there is every evidence that Jesus' tomb is found here in Japan. And both by Christian organizations. Imagine. So he said, first I thought it was accidental, and then when I studied both, then I was left with no doubt that it was a link, there was a chain, universal chain of Christian ploys to discredit Ahmadiyya views. And one thing is published in one book in the name of a scholar, and in response, as if this is actually exactly what was happening, another book is published in Tokyo supporting this view and confusing the issue, the entire issue of Jesus' migration. So I have put Ahmadis on to this in Japan as well. We will pursue the matter and will not leave it until they analyze it threadbare and present the hard facts. Those sorts of, the so-called evidence they present in case of Jesus' tomb in Japan, I once read it long ago, is so hollow and meaningless. Absolutely not worth any attention, any second look. And they are highlighting it, the Christians. They are not writing it by way of criticism. They are supporting it, knowing that nobody would believe it. But when they give it extra prop and support it, then what would happen is the Ahmadiyya view will be damaged and diminished in comparison to this. All right, if such hocus pocus is believed in about Jews in Japan, why not in Kashmir? So this is the Christian attitude. Most of the Christian common people do not know what's happening. It's happening right at the top. a few crooked minds are planning. And if you read Masih Maud comments on Christian leaders while discussing the issue of Antichrist, he said people don't know why the Holy Prophet named them as Antichrist unless they know, they study their diplomacy, their cunning ploys against Islam and their conspiracies. They don't know exactly what they are. Apparently they are good people, innocent people who preach humane values, do this, be kind to the poor. But when it comes to plotting against Islam, then wolves can be less cruel than they are. And this is exactly what Hazrat Masih Maud has inferred from his study. The same people today. It is not Christianity, I assure you. It's the hatred or fear of Islam which unites them with the politicians. Some among them would be maybe naive enough to believe in the distorted concept of Christianity, which of course no sane man can believe as it is presented, but some people are like this, like mullahs. Everywhere there are mullahs. So there are mullahs among the Christian fathers as well, I know, but they are not a majority, they are not a power as far as the positive values of the society are concerned. They have lost their battle against society altogether. They can only be raised from the dead when it comes to the hatred of Islam. This is the common factor you find in politics, in economics, in educational system, in religion, wherever you go. This is the one common factor. So they shut their eyes to these things. When you listen to their talk on television discussion on Bosnia, honestly, it feels like vomiting. How their political leaders shut their eyes to naked issues of glaring violation of principles of justice. It's very complicated. It's a sort of civil war. And we have been giving them warnings not to go a step forward. And how many times these warnings were ignored and disregarded? Blatantly. They know it. 100 times or more. And never were they punished for those blatant violations. While Saddam Hussein, if he even dared suggest that I will not accept that part of the United Nations decision because it's cruel, it's not just, say, who is Saddam Hussein to stand against the united might of the whole mankind, which is represented in United Nations? We will not permit disrespect to this, the holiest of the world organizations. This will be an affront to humanity if we permit that. These double talks, these double standards are being openly discussed on television, and nobody moves even the smallest muscle. And most shamelessly they discuss it and tell them, wave it off, there are problems. Why do we employ so harshly embargo against the Bosnians? Simply for the fear that otherwise the war will spread and become a Balkan war. You common people don't understand these problems. So the enemy, who is the transgressor, he is permitted to have all sorts of arms, any number of arms, because that will shorten the war, It will stop the war from spreading. And the defendant is deprived of all possibilities of having access even to bullets. For the simple, reasonable, the simple, wise argument, they consider it, that if we do it, the war will be prolonged. They are protesting against America withdrawing their warships. Who would monitor the smuggling of arms to the Bosnians? That is their worry now. That is why the issue has become so alive. That is why the enemy is permitted to strike the hardest now to finish off the Bosnians once and for all. What is it? Is it Christianity? I don't blame Christianity. It's wrong for us, for anybody to blame Christianity. It is a conspiracy against Islam in view of the historic conquest by some Muslim countries like Turkey of some parts of Europe. Some Muslim countries like the dynasty, Abdul Rahman's dynasty, which conquered a part of Europe in Spain long ago. Now these memories of this are so horrifying for them. And also the fear of the spread of the message of Islam against Christianity. It's just that, not a love for Christianity, it's a jealous guarding of their civilization, whether crooked or right or wrong, it's immaterial. Their superiority over the rest of the world must be guarded at every cost, and the only challenge which can arise from Islam and from nowhere else. Add to this the stupidity, suicidal policies of the Muslim countries, who help them further damage the image of Islam and blemishing it with their own ugliness in their minds. And then the picture is complete. It is this against which Ahmadis are to wage a jihad, a real holy jihad of sacrifices, a jihad not to be fought with weapons, but with superior wisdom. We must understand their ways and means, and we must counter them, and we must win with the same weapons as they employ, but more wisely and more dexterously employed in defense of Islam. This is the message which I deliver to you, Khuddam, and this is the message you must pass on to all Ahmadi youth. Okay?
This is exactly what my question was leading up to, exactly how the Ahmadiyya Jamaat is
the analysis has taken me so long.
Yeah, sorry.
If I develop the question further as you led me to, then instead of having a late dinner, we will have an early sehri. You have to go to fasting for tomorrow.
If I just mention one thing, you don't have to answer and elaborate.
But I have spoken on this subject so many ways, in so many times, at so many times, in so many ways. You know that. You should know, I mean. Any other question, please? At last. But not the last, perhaps.
No.
The whole line is that of those who want to ask questions? This way, and then that way? And then that way. What is the time? I think we'll have to hold another question answer session. You see, supplementary one later on, okay? Whenever you, I'm available. It's up to you. Because if we sit with them, because, sometimes I could do away with a question summarily, dispose of it freely, shortly and brief. But the issue raised is so important in my eyes that although I have spoken on that so many times, I still feel you must be educated on these things more thoroughly and must be reminded of these things more often than before. Because they are vital issues, some of them which have been raised here. So don't think I am taking longer time unnecessarily. I could have disposed with the question in a few sentences if I like sometimes I do to this gentleman. With due apologies, of course. But that is not because I belittle him in any way. It's out of a love we have developed between us and him. He has become so familiar to the institution of question answers that without him there is no joy left. So sometimes, I play with him and have a little joke, but only out of love and like you have sometime play with your children and the children play with your elders. So don't mind it if I say that.
Yes, sir.
Do you mind it?
No.
Good. Jazakumullah.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Hazur, this question was asked by me in Washington. But
Yes, I know.
But I think that the question was not read the whole through, and Hazur has answered
Partial truth.
Yes. So I repeat the same question. Again.
All over again?
Yes, sir.
Only read that part
Yes.
which you think has
Yes.
not yet been dealt with.
Yes.
And don't repeat the whole question,
Yes, sir.
because it runs into 2 pages, I suppose. The question does, I mean.
I repeat
Only
that
the
part.
remaining part.
Yes. What Hazur we should do if we say Zohar and Asr prayer, although we know that the Imam must have recited Surah Fatiha, but do not know what surah of the Quran is he reciting. What should
Now, I understand.
we
Do you
do?
mean, should everyone who joins the prayer first go to the Imam and ask, breathe into his ear, say, please tell me what was the surah which you recited? Do it very quietly and respectfully, of course, I know, without disturbing the other worshippers, and then come back and occupy his space. And yet another one comes and goes to the Imam first. I think that is why it was suggested to me that a door should be opened in the front of the mosque. Did this suggestion originate from you?
So what should we do now?
You should decide whatever you think of.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
Jazakumullah. It's as easy as that, you know. I could have said that. So there are 2 ways of answering a question, a short one and a long one. But I did not want him to dishearten him, so I took the longer route.
All right.
Okay.
Another question.
Yes, please. Yes.
During Zohar and Asr prayers, when the Imam is a traveler, he says 2 rakats.
Right.
And Mutki
The one who follows him.
yes, follows him,
Yes.
says 4 rakats.
Right.
That is 2 rakats after the Imam has said the Salam.
Correct.
And the Muqtadi,
Right.
In order to complete his or her prayer, says additional 2 rakats.
Right.
But when the Imam is a local man, the Muqtadi says 4 rakats
Right.
after Imam.
Even if he's
Well,
on journey.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
So Hazur throw some light on the subject and tell us the hikmat behind this.
Now, do you suggest that if somebody is on journey and he's saying his prayer behind a local imam, after 2 rakats you say Assalamu alaikum?
No,
Is that what you suggest?
no.
What are you suggesting then?
No, he should say the 4 rakats.
So then there is no problem. No question left.
What is the hikmat? When the Imam,
Hikmat is obvious. The absurdity of everyone saying 2 rakat behind an imam and going his own several path. That is the disorderly situation and laughable situation and absurd situation which is avoided. And you must remember that imam is to follow, is to be followed.
yes,
If imam makes a mistake, the muqtadi has to commit the same mistake knowing that the imam is making a mistake.
yes.
So
But
if
the
imam
is a
says 4
traveler-
rakat, the muqtadi must say the 4 rakat.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes,
The hikmat should be asked regarding imam saying 2 rakat
Yes.
and the muqtadi saying 4 rakat.
yes,
So you put your question in the wrong place.
yes.
First
that
of
is my-
all,
that is my
I understand.
question.
I'm correcting your perspective first.
Yes, sir.
The question should not have been in relation to the imam saying 2 rakat, that 4 rakat, and a man on journey saying the 4 rakat.
That is all right.
There is no problem. It's
Yes.
absolutely all right.
Yes,
Now the question is, the imam is saying 2 rakat.
yes,
What is farz, what is obligatory for those who are not on journey is 4 rakat.
yes,
Right?
yes,
So the obligatory cannot be sacrificed for the sake of optional. The choice of imam is optional. A local imam could be made. But if you make an imam who is on journey,
Yes.
then this is an optional issue with you. This does not permit others to forego the obligatory part of the injunction and ignore it and finish their prayer only in 2 rakat. If, suppose, this had happened, do you know what would happen? For every prayer, people look right and left. Is there a man on journey? Any Musafir, please? Come forward and lead the prayer. How laughable the whole situation will become. Eh? Right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, please. Or after that, I think there's no question. There shouldn't be any question anymore. There's such a wonderful question, and everybody has become so happy. And now I think it's also time for dinner, isn't it? Already? Late? It's okay. So, do you call it a day, or shall we sit longer for some more questions to be answered? No, it's not up to me, it's up to them. A bit longer, okay. Next, please. Oh, mashallah. Mr. Little Loan. Wa alaikum assalam.
Well, my question today is, how do you become a prophet?
A what?
How do you become a prophet?
You don't become a prophet.
And how do you become a Khalifa?
You don't become a Khalifa either. You are made a prophet and you are made a Khalifa by God. How did you become alone?
From my dad.
Did you become yourself alone? You don't know how you became. Because you were made alone. So no questions are asked. When you have no choices of your own being on the issue of what you should be or what you are, then this question is invalid. Khalifa does not become, a person does not become a Khalifa himself. A person does not become a prophet himself. It is God's choice, He makes it, and in the first case, He expresses His choice directly by addressing the person whom He has decided to make a prophet of God. And in the second case, He expresses His choice through the will of the believers who have been trained in trained in electing offices honestly, and only to elect somebody whom they believe should be Khalifa in accordance with his relation to God and his fear of God, that is taqwa. So when people are trained to think in these terms, their choice becomes the choice of God, because they choose according to the standards employed by God, right? Or devised by God. And then Allah has also special blessing. He extends the cover of His mercy over such electoral college, and as if they are guided by the spirit of holiness. So that is why we call Allah makes the Prophet and Allah makes the Khalifa. They don't become themselves. If you are entertaining any wrong thoughts, please dispel them. Right? Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam.
I have two questions, if you
Please.
permit. My first, Zur, we've all seen the situation in the Middle East and Palestine, where Palestinians are killing each other, recently has been seen in the news. In light of this and other recent events in the region, what does Zur see as the future for the region at the moment?
You see, it's not a regional question. It's a global question. This is not the first time that Muslims have started killing each other. This is not the only place where they have done so. They do it everywhere. Whenever the time comes, they never hesitate to kill other Muslims for the sake of some political or other ulterior motives. So this is the basic disease with which we must tackle and try to cure it. And such diseases in religious history are found to have prevailed so many times before. And every time the remedy, not only suggested but implemented by God, employed by God, was the remedy of sending someone from himself to cure them of their dishonest thinking, their dishonest behavior, their disloyalty to the values of their own religion. This can't be cured superficially or by any attempt at the hands of the religious leaders, because they themselves are in fact accessories to this crime. Maybe the larger share of the crime is earned by them. So the only answer is God sends someone from himself, and those who begin to follow him, they are gradually, through a long process of internal jihad, are cured of their ills, and their moral standard is raised gradually and steadily until in God's sight they become a model for the rest of the world, and then they grow in number and increase in their influence. That is how the things are changed. There is no shortcut formula.
Right.
Thank you.
My
The second question.
Second question. As a practicing homeopath yourself, what would you say to the view held by science and the medical profession that homeopathy is merely a placebo effect, i.e. it is all in the
merely what?
A placebo effect, all in the mind.
Placebo, I know.
Yes.
You see, this, all that is in one's mind, the question is, can it influence others so positively that that becomes an observable fact by other people, and the cure is brought about so positively in the case of a patient that it can even be testified by any advanced medical system of testification. Can it happen if you are just talking of placebo? It doesn't, huh? So this is how homeopathy works. Daily, without fail, I have incidents brought to my notice where a patient was almost rejected by the allopathic system of cure, and they said, we don't have any other cure for you. We've tried whatever we could. You cannot be cured, or do whatever you like. That person comes to me, asks for some prescription, I prescribe, and sometimes the very next day I hear the report that with the grace of God everything is, every disease is wiped out and no more suffering. This happens not once in a blue moon, it happens daily. And from all over the world I keep hearing reports, not always of my prescription working so miraculously, but now that other Ahmadis are becoming homeopaths, they write to me about their own several experiences here and there, and they're amazing. You see, so they are, this morning, or was it yesterday? I think it was, yes. There's something which happened in 2 days. The day before yesterday, I received a patient who was suffering from backache for the last 3 or 4 months. It was a lady who went to all possible doctors, hospitals, hakims, and every system was employed. But she couldn't sleep restfully even for about an hour, because the whole night she was kept restless and in suffering and in pain because of this backache. She said, do something, I'm suffering so much. So with the grace of Allah, I prescribed something, And yesterday I heard such an excited telephone call. He said, you know what happened? I said, no, I don't know what happened. This is the first night after 3 or 4 months that I have slept like a log. No pain, no discomfort, and the feeling of relaxation which I am passing through now is indescribable after 3 months. And she told me she had only taken 2 doses of that medicine. So is it a placebo? Not only this, people go on reporting back to their hospitals, their surgeons, their doctors. They see the case, they said, well, it has happened, but we can't believe it. This is observation. And observation is scientific. Whether you fail to understand how it is brought about, it does not matter. What you see happening is truth. And nobody can poo-poo it by saying theoretically it is not possible. It's happening, then it has happened. So the homeopathic observations of cure are an observed phenomenon, a demonstrable phenomenon. A medicine which works in this case works also in that case. If the symptoms remain the same, it works. It works even on animals. I once cured the cancer of a horn, of the base of the horn in a cow, which still is considered to be incurable by the allopathic system. You know, when this cattle suffers from the base of the horn cancer, it kills them within a week. So one Ahmadi doctor, veterinary doctor, once came to me. He said there is some she buffalo owned by somebody. The buffalo is of highest quality, very precious. And nothing can be done for it because she is suffering from that sort type of cancer. And according to our science, it can't be cured. I gave that doctor a dose of Sorinum 1000, a single dose. I said, give it to the cow and report after some days. And after the week was over, after the 10 days over, after the month was over, the cow was still enjoying good health, or she buffalo it was, I think. And he was amazed, so he took some more medicine from me and tried it on some other similar cases and reported success in almost every case. Hardly 1 or 2 cases were lost out of 20 or so which he treated, and then, do you call it placebo?
No, I don't. So, as you say, it's been widespreadly, there's been proving it's widespread, but why, as a homeopath yourself, why do you see the medical profession not accepting it or not wanting to accept it?
You're talking of history. You're talking of medical profession of 100 years ago. Now they have changed their attitude so positively in favor of homeopathy that every day greater number of allopaths are turning to homeopathy in this very country. And the practice of homeopathy is becoming popular everywhere in Europe and other countries of the world. So gone are the days when they used to say, as a class, homeopathy is nothing. Now they are joining more and more to the homeopathic system and benefiting from it. You must have seen a program History somewhere.
No, I appreciate that. I just thought if there was...
I mean, some television program of historic nature, you used to be...
No, I'm studying it myself.
Yourself? Acha, good.
Assalamu alaikum. In the past few years, there have been a number of books which purport to the theory...
Come closer to the microphone, yes?
Purport to the theory that the radiocarbon dating on the Turin Shroud was manipulated in some way.
It is right.
They state that the shroud is...
You see, I have put some Ahmadi scholars on the trail of these people, these scientists, and what is happening. And now with the grace of Allah, even Christian scholars, scientists and religious people as well, have raised their voice against the fraud committed at a very high level in case of carbon dating of the shroud of Turin. And recently a book has been published in America. I think I have brought a copy with me, but I didn't find time to read it. But fortunately for me, other Ahmadis read it and send me the gist of their finding, and then I have to just scan through and get only to a few passages where I must read them concentratedly. So all this is now being given a public exposure. It was a fraud committed in collusion with some Catholic Christian authorities. Right?
Assalamu alaikum. My question relates to the National Lottery, and I hope everyone is aware that it is prohibited.
I've already told the administration here to announce it to Ahmadis at the beat of the drum that this is haram, positively illegal in Islam to do that, and forbidden in Islam. You see, what will you gain from it? 1 million people or more will suffer for the sake of one person or two accidentally running into money which he cannot handle anyway. See, a system which creates peaks, and even very narrow peaks of capitalists here and there, and lowers the common level of the have-nots to still a lower level, a deeper level of being poor people. This is not a good system at all.
Yeah,
and then a voice is being raised by the wise English thinkers as well. They say there are enough problems we are facing with the growing attitude of irresponsibility. Now you have introduced this lottery system, and whatever was left of responsibility in the attitude of the British will be thrown overboard now, will be wiped out. Because the very system creates an attitude which is not responsible. You speculate, you risk, because you have no regular way of working in a superior manner so that your money grows. That is the real challenge of economy. So when you escape that route and run into the route of dices, as they are thrown, they may be cast in your favor or against you. That's just a chance. So it is a meaningless system which further corrodes the attitudes of a people. They become less responsible in their thinking.
I agree with you totally. It was, recently I heard a report that in Spain that it's become so traditional that people are buying lottery tickets that even children in their early teens are spending their pocket money.
See, that's it.
In buying lottery tickets. My question is in your view,
Question is yet to come?
Sorry?
The question is yet to come?
Is yet to come, yes.
I thought I had answered it.
When is a investment not a gamble?
When it is what?
When is a investment not a gamble? Not a gamble.
How?
In the sense of stocks and shares, people consider it as to be a gamble, and other people consider it to be an investment, and you get your.
You see, speculations are a sort of gambling, a form of gambling, which sometimes plays havoc with the peace of hundreds of thousands of people. It is even more dangerous than ordinary small-scale gambling. Because in the small-scale gambling, everybody knows what he's in for. He is ready mentally to lose a pound or two. So he can sleep over it. Slightly hurt, of course, but still he can survive. But the type of gambling you are suggesting, I have seen people who suffered in large numbers, not exceptionally one or two, large numbers during the last financial crisis because of this type of speculation, and they lost not only their own money but the money they had borrowed from their friends, from their parents, and the money which they cheated people out of their pockets, you know. And then they had to run away and hide their face somewhere. Many houses were completely shattered and made bankrupt, and the misery, the spell was of such a nature that even to meet such people, you know, talking to me of the suffering they have gone through, whatever their saving of the lifetime gone down the drain, and even they borrowed money from some others for the sake of some apparently very ludicrous investment. But it was not ludicrous, it was ridiculous. And it resulted in such a ludicrous end that it was devastating. All sorts of gambling which are based on uncertain facts, where speculation can turn this way or that way, not as a regular system, but as an irregular, twisted system. That falls into the category of the forbidden, according to me. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Walaikum Salam. Where did you get this special cap from?
Assalamu alaikum, Manzoor. This is my winter cap.
Original?
Winter. For the
winter cap?
Winter.
Winter cap.
Winter.
No, I didn't say whether it was summer cap or not. I know you will never wear it in summer.
No.
Or shouldn't at least. But I'm talking where, I'm asking you, where did you get it from?
Just local tradition, wool shop.
Do the British people wear this cap?
Well, I'm trying to set a standard. I'm trying to set a standard by which people...
Don't mind it. It was just inquisitiveness which made me ask you a question. Because normally, you know, this type of hanging thing is attached to that red cap which is called Turkish cap. But
fez.
Instead of this long hanging material, normally such caps have a small protruding something over there, you know.
Yes.
So that is why I asked, you know, that is why I was intrigued. It was a different style. Anyway, it's okay. It becomes you all right.
I hope I don't lower the standard of questions some more. The question regards music.
Yes.
And the music industry. You know, no doubt, obviously aware of the influence of MTV and other satellite-based global music system. Their influence. There are a few more coming on in the next 6 months, as along the lines of MTV, and their influence is obviously quite huge. There's a lot of examples of positive usage for music in therapy and accelerated learning and things like that. Just wondering what our policy is on music and whether we can be...
The Ahmadiyya television will remain free of music.
Okay.
That's one thing. So don't waste your energy on planning musical programs.
Oh, no.
And as far as the people's interest goes, there is never a halfway thing between right and wrong. I assure you that if for the sake of winning people's attention we add music to the program, people will lose interest in this rather than have more attraction. Because the type of music we'll permit will be small, banal thing, which will be a sort of compromise. And they will say, what sort of shoddy music that is, you know, belonging to the past ages. So they would rather turn to a modern televisions of pop music and this and that. Why should they come to MTA for that sort of music? You see?
Yeah.
This is like the attempt of some hakims who try to present bad tasting medicine with added sugar. And they mix sugar and some other things and call it gulkhan. And if you try to taste it, you know, it's so obnoxious to your taste, it's so unpalatable. It's much better to have something very bitter and swallow it and have done with it, than to start eating it, in large quantity, mixed with flower petals and sugar and this and that, and they say, this is the best way of presenting the unsavory medicines which we have to prescribe for our patients. It doesn't work. The simple, honest system works. If something is bitter, you take it as a bitter thing and swallow it and have done with it. If something is sweet, and keep it sweet, don't add bitter things. Otherwise, something will happen which did happen once in Qadian. And I'm not going to name the person, but Hazrat Mirza Bashir Ahmad Sahib himself told me this, that once he was passing through an office room, from his room he walked through the other room to the outer exit door. He saw some gentleman, very respectable, very highly educated person, eating some bread and some curry he had brought with. So he was having his lunch. And the bread was, with some butter applied over it. Looked like ghee and butter. We call it chupudi roti, So the bread was very attractive looking, with all that shine of the butter on top of it. So Hazrat Mian Bashir Ahmad Sahib thought he must be enjoying this lunch very much. So he stood by and said, out of winning his favor, expressing his love for him and kindness, he said, could I have a mouthful of this bread, this wonderful bread you are eating, please, just to find out how tasteful it is. So he took it and hid it on the other side. He said, no, I won't give it. Hazrat Mian Bashir Ahmad told me he was so embarrassed, because normally this man was very respectful and loving to him, and suddenly he received the shock of being rejected outright. He said, no, not one mouthful. He said, I am asking for just a small one mouthful. You can have the rest for yourself, only just to taste. He said, no, please don't insist, I am not going to give you a single morsel out of it. He was astounded, but he wanted to find out why. He knew there was some other reason. He said, why are you doing it to me? He said, out of respect for you, out of love for you. I said, what do you mean? You're refusing me to, even a small piece of your bread, and you say out of love. What sort of love that is? He said, now I tell you the secret. The doctors have prescribed me cod liver oil. And it's so obnoxious to drink that. I can't take it in one mouthful. So I have applied it to my bread. I eat it mouthful after mouthful, slow poisoning, Imagine. There's no halfway thing. Right. Either you present music and all that goes with it, or you present something pure and simple. If people are interested in that, they would come, otherwise they won't. And I know from reports that more and more people are not only turning to Ahmadiyya television, but are getting addicted to it. I'm talking of non-Ahmadis. Even from Arabia. Jaswal Sahib received a call the other day, and he was amazed to hear somebody speaking from Jordan. He said, and he wrote it later on to him, I saw also the letter which was faxed to him. He said, as you know, as if we were aware, that more and more Arabs are turning to MTA. So I seek your permission to publish your programs in my magazine, which is a magazine for providing facts of this and that nature. So please permit us to publish your future timetable. And he mentioned it as if it was already known to us. We had no knowledge of that. He said, as you know, more and more Arabs are turning to MTA. And then I keep receiving letters that once a non-Ahmadi starts seeing these programs, he becomes addicted. He can't turn to any other program. In one a city of Pakistan which is known for its hostility to Ahmadiyyat, and that is not only one city, there are others of similar nature. I'm talking of one particular one. The neighbors of an Ahmadi approached him and he said, that they collectively, and they said to him, look here, there was somebody, some Ahmadi who had put a booster on their roof, and we also began to watch your programs, and they're so wonderful, we don't want to turn to any other program. Suddenly the booster has been taken away. Please, would you kindly, for our sake, put another booster on top of your roof? He was amazed. The booster was taken away because of the pressure of the mullahs and the government searching for such Ahmadis who were employing boosters. So the neighbor said, it's our responsibility, nobody can touch you. Go ahead and do it. And even in the small, shops, like betel shops, the betel leaf shops, they're called pan shops, there are reports from some areas that they are publicly displaying MTA and attract large crowds of people, and nobody dare oppose them or do damage to their sect. So these programs are already proving so useful, and the public consensus has approved the quality of these programs in such powerful a way that I don't think it would be advisable to change their nature. Don't talk of music, not even in a musical voice as you have. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Jazakallah.
Jazakumullah.
Assalamu alaikum, Hazur. My daughter also singing Ahmadiyya Zindabad from MTA.
Who, your daughter?
My daughter, she is only 2.5 years old.
Does she happen to be non-Ahmadi, Nauzubillah?
No.
We are talking of non-Ahmadis. Their response is so powerful. This is what I said to you, not to discourage you in your expression, only lest you should have misunderstood us. I'm not talking of Ahmadiyya response. I'm talking of non-Ahmadiyya response. Even the response of those who were sworn enemies of Ahmadiyyat, I received sometimes reports that such a man just came out of inquisitiveness, out of curiosity, to watch a program, and so that he could go back and tell they're doing this against Islam and talking that against Islam and so on. He got glued to the program for the whole of the remaining period and went back a crestfallen person, apologizing for his previous views and saying that, for God's sakes, forgive me what I was doing to you and permit me to come to these programs regularly. There were 4 such people once reported, and within a few days all the 4 became Ahmadis. So this is, with the grace of Allah, the impact of these programs. But as far as children go, Ahmadi children, as you have just said, they're enjoying it so thoroughly. Sometimes they force their parents not to turn to any other channel. They say, no, we are happy with this Ahmadiyya program. So it's doing a lot of good, unimaginably beneficial to the Ahmadiyya cause, because I don't know now that the Ahmadiyya Telemini is working, what we could do without it. Within 1 year, we have started observing its influence. When I was in America, I received a letter from an Ahmadi girl who was a university student, somewhere in Oxford or Cambridge, I don't remember exactly, but she was a student of a very highly respectable university. And she wrote to me confessing that although she was born in an Ahmadi home, and raised as if she was an Ahmadi, she had no interest in Ahmadiyyat, she had no knowledge of Ahmadiyyat. She just grew up as a secular educated girl, and had reached a very high standard academically. He said, once it so happened, I visited a friend and there was MTA channel, being displayed at that time. He said, I was so interested. I started looking at it, and then I regularly started going. In the university, I can't see all the programs, but on weekends, I regularly go and watch these. And I have become Ahmadi again. It's such a big bang, Said, I wish I had not wasted my life before. This is, with the grace of Allah, the impact of these programs, which are not very developed, which are very poorly presented. When I teach language programs, sometimes we don't have even a toy of a horse to show them what a horse is. And we make do with pictures and this and that. But still, the objective of teaching language is achieved in a manner as nowhere else you will notice, you will witness that. Ravil, a Russian-born gentleman, has attended 18 such lessons. And if you hear him speak Urdu and express himself, you'll be amazed. So this is Ahmadiyya Television. It is a very great blessing of Allah which has descended upon us from heaven. And it is meant to create great things for Ahmadiyya. So let us stick to this simple, honest presentation without any affectation, without any artificial means of making it more attractive. People are fed up, in fact, with hollow things. Deep inside they know that a reality is always more beautiful than an artificial presentation of a hollow thing, a hollow object, or a hollow philosophy. Ahmadiyyat there is solid right to the core, mashallah. Okay?
And now my questions.
I thought you came only to let me know what the beautiful response of your daughter.
No, Hazur.
Another question?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, lottery. Hazur, is it allowed to install lottery machines in their premises?
For God's sake, don't it? It is like, your question is like this, that I know it is forbidden to kill people, but it is permitted to create a slaughterhouse where they will be slaughtered. Now, you are doing the same thing to lottery. You say it is forbidden for me, but I'll create a slaughterhouse for slaughtering people. This is not a fair question at all. You should have nothing to do with such things as you consider forbidden in Islam.
Hazur, already some people's got, like Texco or post office people, they insist to you to install a machine or something like that.
That is your problem. That's not my problem. Do whatever you may, but you must not rebel against Islamic injunctions. You must not violate the clear-cut instructions of the Holy Quran and of the Holy Prophet.
Yes.
That's on one side, and the other side is the worldly gain or worldly compulsion, whatever you may call it. The comparison is obvious. There is no choice.
Okay.
Right?
Take it.
Please. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. You are going very fast now, mashallah. Huh? Yeah. Getting a very charming figure.
Thanks.
Okay, please.
Yeah, my
question. There was a child of yesterday, a small child, now you look at him, he's growing into a handsome gentleman. Please.
As you know, technology throughout the ages has constantly been advancing.
Right.
And I believe that especially in the last 50 years it has been advancing at an exponential rate. So far that, today I can't even imagine in 20 years where I'll be in terms of technology and the world. And what I wanted to know is, will there ever be a limit to advancing technology? And will man ever be content?
You see, there will be no limit as far as the advancement of any technology is concerned, because according to the Holy Quran, you cannot even encompass the knowledge of the smallest particle, because God has put more into it than you can ever encompass.
Yes.
So if there are always secrets to be discovered and disclosed, and it is the disclosure of new laws and hidden things which pushes the wheel of scientific advancement further.
Yeah.
Then there could be no end, of course. Logically it's not possible. But it is possible for man to come to an end himself. If he disregards the purpose of his own creation and treats with disrespect all the bounties of Allah bestowed upon him, and this constant advancement is one of the bounties, then a time must come when he would be punished. And as such, he may be, and according to the Quran, he will be wiped out of this superior position, if not existence. Now, I can interpret those verses in two ways. One is that it may be implied that the race of mankind will be wiped out of existence completely, and a new superior species will be created. That is one way of understanding. The other is that the race will continue, but like monkeys and chimpanzees, because the new creation will rise so much higher in its grandeur and magnanimity and wisdom and vision and capabilities, and maybe even the potentials, like if more sense may be added to their five senses, that sort of thing. That this human race will become just a small thing, not worthy of communication with God.
Yes.
As such, they will be abandoned and they live as like the extinct animals sometimes linger on for a while. So that is how I read the message of the Quran.
Yeah.
Advancement cannot end, but the steps which are advancing may be arrested.
Yes.
Out of their own folly. Yeah. Right?
Yes, I understand what you mean. Thank you.
Thank you. Achha, I am glad that we decided to sit on in this question answer session, but just now we have discovered that before this the food was not ready. So they have just sent the message in that now the food is ready. All right then. If the food is ready, we call it a day. Okay? You all approve? Okay, Assalamu alaikum. In 10 minutes or 20 minutes? In 15 minutes, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.